defence of our country, especially during World War One and World War Two. Of course, none of us can personally remember anyone who died in World War One, and only a few of us may know some of those from World War Two, whose name appears on our village memorial. But the least we can do is to thankfully recall their efforts on our behalf. Being the age I am, I could put a few faces to the names on that memorial down there. And thus, for example, I remember our Winter, my school teacher, who left us one morning, went out to Singapore and died in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. I also remember Percy Batten, to whom I was slightly related through one of my aunts. And other names down there too. I can remember the persons concerned. But my most vivid memories are not of the men themselves, but of their relatives. The relatives who were staggered by the loss of a husband, a son or a father. Those people who knew that dreadful experience of seeing Pross Wills, the postmaster, coming up the path with a yellow envelope, a yellow telegram in his hand. I remember just one or two. I remember Mrs. Curtis. She lived in the house on the main road, still there, opposite what is now Reed Drive. My family supplied her egg ration, and it was one of my little jobs every week to deliver eggs to Mrs. Curtis. Before D-Day, Mrs. Curtis's son was camped in the New Forest with the Hampshires. And it was as he was in the convoy that was taking him to embark on a landing craft in Southampton docks that he passed through Marchwood. And of course he got to the back of the lorry and he could see all the scenes so well known to him. And just as he passed his mother's house, she happened to come out to shake him out. They managed a quick wave to each other, and that was the last time Mrs. Curtis saw her son, because he became one of the first who were to die on the beaches of Normandy. And then I remember Mrs. McEwen, a widow, who was our next door neighbour. What a pain in the neck she was. She was a proper busybody and nosy character. She was always calling at our back door and invited the most awkward times. And we knew she was on her way because she always called out, "Doo-doo!" as she approached. And the adults of my family would all groan and say, "Oh dear, here she is again. What does she want this time?" But one day, there was no doo-doo. And I watched in amazement as Mrs. McEwen came and immediately flung her arms around my aunt and sobbed her heart out. a broken woman. That yellow telegram in her hand told the whole story. And after she lost her son, she was never the same person again. And I was left with the memory of that distressing incident that I have never forgotten. And of course, sometimes the arrival of that dreaded telegram told a message other than that of someone who'd been killed in action. And that was the case of Myrtle Pickering, the daughter of Sid Harvey of Magazine Lane. Her telegram said that her husband Ron, serving as a Royal Marine Commando, had been captured at Dieppe, where, on Hitler's direct orders and against all the terms of the Geneva Convention, POWs were manacled and starved. Fortunately, Ron, although he was completely emaciated, he did survive. And I was the next to meet him on the Royal Marine Assault Course in Malta, where as an instructor he put us out of conditioned matelots through the treadmill. But just spare a thought a moment for Myrtle, who during those long years of waiting knew that her husband was suffering because Hitler wanted to make an example of him and his mates to other invader who would dare to try and step foot on continental Europe again. And as I think about those three women, I come to the conclusion that I suppose all wars are like that. It's the civilians, the loved ones who suffer most. As the sad events in Gaza are teaching us right now. The poet Binyam was right. The fallen do not grow old. They are not wearied by old age. But isn't it true that also those who are left have to carry the painful burden of sad memories for the rest of their lives? So perhaps tomorrow, as we remember the fallen, we should also just remember those who also just had to stand and weep. Perhaps those who first grieved a century ago, and perhaps some of their descendants who will still be feeling the loss today. As Binyam's poem also said concerning the fallen, they mingle not with laughing comrades again. They sit no more at familiar tables at home. They have no lot in our labour of the daytime. But in the innermost heart of their homeland they are known, as the stars are known to the night. We will remember them. Remember those who died and those whose lives were never the same again. Would it be appropriate that we stand now for a moment of remembrance, please?